Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Redmond Park Plan second public meeting. We do acknowledge that this gathering conflicts with Yom Kippur and wish well those observing this sacred day. To those who aren't with us as they observe this day, Gemar Haktima Tova. While you're waiting for us to start, we're just going to wait for a couple of minutes to get everyone together. But while you're waiting, please note that all attendees are on mute. If you're dialing in by phone, you can participate during the discussion sessions by pressing *6 to raise your hand, and then you will be able to unmute by pressing *9 once the administrator gives you unmuting permissions. Next slide. During the presentation, if you have a question or comment, please use the questions and answers feature marked on your screen by the letters Q and A. We will answer your questions during the question and answer session, either as a reply or out loud during the discussion sessions. For those people on the call who use languages other than English, we do have interpreters available for Mandarin, Russian, and Spanish. Please select the interpretation button below, represented by the globe icon. You will then be able to hear the presentation and still have access to the question and answer feature. Here's a look at tonight's agenda. We'll start with a brief presentation to share some information about Redmond's Parks and Recreation System. As a hybrid meeting, we will use live polling questions during the presentation to get your feedback for those on Zoom. Also, you will use the Q&A function for you to share additional comments. For those in person tonight, we have provided comment sheets for you to share your thoughts. We will end the meeting with some information about next steps for the project and how to stay involved. An opportunity for questions and comments will take place at the end of the presentation. However, you are encouraged to put comments and questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation. We will get to as many as time allows for, both in person and through commenting on Zoom. As a reminder, we are conducting this meeting in 3 other languages, so presenters will occasionally pause to give time for interpreters to catch up. Please note that this meeting is being recorded for documentation and will be broadcasted on Redmond City Television, or CTV. And now I would like to introduce Laureen Hamilton, the Parks and Recreation Director for City of Redmond, for welcoming remarks.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you first for taking time out of your evening to join us as we talk about the future of Redmond's Parks and Recreation. The Parks, Arts, Recreation, Culture, and Conservation, or as we like to call it, our park plan, guides the work our staff does to prioritize projects and programs. The types of parks and trails projects that are funded often start as ideas in the park plan. With this update, we're looking at how we can make our park system more sustainable and help mitigate climate change, be more equitable and accessible for all members of our community, and develop projects that will help make Redmond more resilient as we grow into the future. As director, I get to see every day how dedicated our Parks and Recreation staff is to our vision of building community through our parks, arts, recreation, and conservation offerings. Your input is central to that process. As I like to tell our staff, we don't build anything for the community without the community. Tonight, we will have a chance to discuss what you and your neighbors said was most important. We'll have the opportunity to review what we heard from the survey and events that we held over the summer and how we turned those into project priorities to enhance our parks and recreation here in Redmond. There will also be opportunities for feedback tonight, both online and in person, and I look forward to hearing all of your great ideas this evening. And again, I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to be with us this evening. It really is the bedrock of the work that we do. And with that, I would like to introduce Steve Du, our park plan consultant, to get us rolling. Steve.
Thank you, Laureen, and good evening, everyone. For those who might be new to the project, I'll start with a quick overview. First, what is the park plan? As Laureen noted, it stands for Parks, Arts, Recreation, Culture, and Conservation. The park plan will serve as the city's 6-year guide and plan for the future. It will inform improvements to the city's parks, trails, natural areas, recreation, and programs over the next 6 to 10 years. Having an updated plan also will keep the city eligible to pursue state and federal grants and leverage local resources. Preparing a new plan will take a little more than a year, and we are now about halfway through that process. We started in the spring with a community survey and taking a close look at the city's park system. Now, we are starting to pull together the working draft of the new park plan, and we'll share some preliminary ideas with you tonight. Going forward, the draft plan will be reviewed by city commissions and city council with adoption next spring. With over 1,300 acres of parkland and 47 city-operated parks, Redmond's park system offers a variety of places to explore. The trails across the city are very popular. These trails and parks support our tree canopy coverage goal and other environmental conservation efforts. The city's 5 community centers bring people of all ages together for indoor recreation, classes, social time, and these centers see over 20,000 hours of usage in a typical year. Over 50,000 attendees take part in city events in a typical year, and the city hosts hundreds of summer camps and sport teams each year. Unique programming also includes the animal farm, horse arena, camps, and other activities at Farrell McWhirter Park. Redmond has a lot to offer. With all of these terrific amenities, how is Redmond doing? There are several ways to look at it. In terms of total parkland, Redmond provides more than 19 acres for every 1,000 people in the city, which is about double than the average of cities that are of a similar size. This is great, but there are also 8 sites that are undeveloped, and those could be improved to add more amenities. The chart to the right compares Redmond against national averages. In all, Redmond is tracking pretty well, but it is below the average for playgrounds, off-leash dog parks, and baseball and softball fields. As you know, Redmond has witnessed tremendous growth. The city grew by 62% between 2000 and 2020. With light rail and urban growth in the centers, the city's population will continue to rise and more pressure will be placed on existing parks, trails, programs. As we look at these trends and the need for the future, community input is helping to shape ideas for near-term priorities. We've had tremendous feedback from the community throughout the process so far. We've had over 2,000 engaged participants in the project, and the city has worked hard to connect with the community in many ways. This includes tabling at community events, festivals, at parks, and along trails, as well as a community survey, a public meeting in June, focus group sessions, and online engagement and information. The city conducted a community survey in late spring to help inform this park plan. It was available also in 4 languages. We've had tremendous feedback and collected over 1,200 responses. Here are some quick takeaways. Park usage is strong, and people visit parks often, with 88% saying they visit at least a couple of times per month. Overall, there is high satisfaction too. 90% are satisfied with the city's parks and trails. Based on what we've heard so far, top priorities for park system improvements include maintaining and caring for existing parks and making sure existing park amenities last longer. expanding trail opportunities and finding ways to improve trail connections, and upgrading existing parks and adding new amenities to provide more choices for recreation. Regarding recreation program and activity needs, there's strong interest for additional pool programs, including swim lessons, family swim time, and lap swimming. Other areas of need include expanding community gardens and additional adult programs, classes, and activities. Some of the priorities noted so far include improving trail connections and adding off-leash dog areas and community gardens. Other high-need amenities include a pool or swim beach, more pickleball courts, additional public art, performances, and events. Also, nearly 3/4 of respondents said the condition of cities' parks and trails are either excellent or good. However, one big takeaway from the survey was that the majority of the 1,200 respondents said that they were not aware of the recreation program options offered by the city. Through survey responses and other feedback from community outreach, a few core themes emerged. One is to take care of what you have. This includes making minor renovations and repairs to keep facilities in good condition. It also includes improving accessibility, signage, and maintenance, as well as improving the natural environment. Another is continuing to build the system, like with the construction of the new Senior and Community Center, which will create more space for recreation programs and classes. It also includes developing the 8 undeveloped park sites across the city. These sites can provide space for more playgrounds, gardens, sport courts, and more. This leads to expanding recreation opportunities and providing the community with more choices for recreation and more variety, from trails to all-inclusive play areas to public art and events. The last big theme is about user conveniences, adding more places to sit and gather, restrooms and signage to tie the whole system of parks and trails together. Staff will look at how this feedback can be implemented in a way that supports citywide goals around environmental sustainability and advancing equity and inclusion. Throughout the process, there have been repeated comments about improvements to Redmond's system, and these themes lead to some core priorities. We've heard many great comments so far, and when we look at the frequent comments against the existing system of parks, trails, and programs, 3 core priority areas came together. In the simplest terms, these have to do with making sure all residents have equitable access to parks and open space, that there's more variety in recreation choices, and that expanding the trail system is important. We're going to focus a little time on each one of these. Starting with the equitable access. One way to think about access to parks is through the idea of a 10-minute walk. Do you and your neighbors live within a 10-minute walk to the city or to a city park? Having Redmond be built around a 10-minute walk is a goal of the city's. We use a mapping analysis to see what this looks like. Like when you use your phone to find directions to go somewhere, we place pins on a map for all of the park access points. Then we tell the computer to travel from those points a set distance. And a half mile is a good translation for a 10-minute walk. Then we create 10-minute walkthroughs for each park. And you can see that in pink in the map. When we add all of the city parks together, you can see a snapshot of the areas that are within a 10-minute or a half-mile walk to a developed city park. Today, 54% of city households are within 10 minutes of a developed city park. I mentioned earlier that Redmond has 8 sites for future parks that are currently undeveloped. Those are shown as stars on the map. Once these sites are developed as parks, then 63% of households will be within a 10-minute walk to a park. Areas still showing as white on the map are areas where people need to travel more than a half mile or that 10-minute walk to get to a park. This could inform where to acquire additional parkland. So for some preliminary recommendations about improving park access to get closer to the 10-minute walk goal, the city should prepare park site master plans and then develop those 8 parks. The city also should pursue acquisitions to fill other gaps in park access across the city. Also, with rapid growth in Redmond, the city should continue to coordinate with residential developers to make sure that there are urban parks and plazas in the urban centers. Before we go to the next core priority, we want to take a quick pause and check in with you. From the ideas I just covered, do you think these ideas about access to parkland are going in the right direction or the wrong direction? For those on Zoom, we'll do this as a real-time polling option. And for those in the room tonight, please look to your printed handout. Again, do you think these ideas about access to parkland are going in the right direction or the wrong direction? The Zoom poll appears on the screen now, and feel free to select your option. Zoom participants, you can also add additional feedback by using the Q&A function located in your menu bar. So you can type other thoughts in addition to taking the poll. For those in the room tonight, mark your handout to record your opinion so we can include it in the overall tally later tonight. We'll give everyone a few minutes here or a few moments here to mark your responses. And as a reminder, we'll open the floor to Q&A at the end of the presentation, and to also respond to more comments from those that are in the room and commenting through Zoom. And I'll just give it one more second here. It looks like most people have already completed, and you can see that overall 90%, 91% say we're going in the right direction. So this is great feedback. So it's good to get a little validation. So thanks for that. And we will move on to the next topic here in a moment. So now moving to the second core priority, expanding recreation diversity. By this, I mean expanding the range and variety of choices about recreation. We heard from the survey that maintaining existing parks and adding new amenities were 2 top priorities. As I noted earlier, continued population growth and development of urban centers will put more pressure on existing parks, and there will be a need for more spaces to recreate with a wider variety of types of recreation. Redmond already has a great system, but think about how it could be better. Today, you have flexible space in downtown Perth, access to natural areas, sport fields, and specialized recreation with mountain bike trails. Existing community centers provide space for basketball, art programs, classes, and other activities. Year-round and summer camps offer activities for youth to learn about animals and nature, arts and craft, sports, and more. And community events and festivals bring the community together. The existing undeveloped park sites represent about 80 acres of space to accommodate additional recreational uses and help meet some of the community's needs that we've heard about. Also, as today's playgrounds age or need replacement, or as new play or new parks are developed, there's an opportunity to expand the range of play experiences. Today, many of the playgrounds are traditional structures with slides and swings, and I'm sure these look familiar to you. Other styles of playgrounds promote body movement and balance. Others are framed around the idea of nature play, whether it means logs and rocks or using water, sand, and sticks for creative play. Playgrounds should also accommodate users of all abilities, so everyone has an equal opportunity for play. Other play areas make use of the landscape and incorporate slides or climbing into the hills. And playgrounds shouldn't just be for kids. There could be play options for adult kids in the form of fitness, exercise, climbing options. Going beyond play areas and fitness, other recreation options could include splash pads for the summer season, sets of pickleball courts, or even a small grouping of 10 to 14 courts for larger groups or small tournaments, off-leash dog parks, community gardens, indoor recreation space like gyms or multi-use classrooms. Even more options include water access sites or rentals for paddleboards or kayaks, shaded structures for playgrounds, a cricket pitch, or bike skills area. Here are some potential recommendations about expanding recreation diversity and variety for Redmond. Like with improving access to parks, developing the existing undeveloped park sites can add more or new amenities into the park system to add variety. This could include installing more play areas, adding all-inclusive elements, ranging from playgrounds to fitness stations to shelters, or covered areas for outdoor use during rainy season. As Redmond grows, there will still be a need for more indoor recreation space, including gyms, fitness rooms, and multi-purpose classroom space. Even though construction of the new Redmond Senior and Community Center just started, more space for indoor recreation will be needed in Overlake and Southeast Redmond. This could also include more near-term uses for those undeveloped sites, such as temporary or interim usage for things like off-leash areas or bike skills. Again, we'll take a quick pause and ask, do you think these ideas about expanding the variety of recreation options are going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Like before, those on Zoom will see a pop-up in a moment. There it is. Please mark your selection. Also, feel free to use the Q&A function to add any other thoughts or comments you have. For those in the room, please mark your handout with your response to this question. Use additional space on the sheet and add any other thoughts or ideas you've got about recreation options. We'll give everyone another moment to record some responses. I can see people are getting quick. It looks like most people have decided. And it looks like, again, this is going in the right direction, a little more than the first time around. So 95% versus 91%. So again, thank you for the feedback, and continue to add feedback through the Q&A function if you have interest, or write it on your sheets. So we'll go forward into the next option. Now, here's the third priority area: trail connections and trail experiences. In multiple questions in the survey, there was consistently strong interest in improvements to the trail system, especially around growing the system and making more connections. The trail system should also grow to support higher usage and accommodate all different user types. Today's users include walkers, hikers, bikers, runners, skaters, and equestrians. The growth in e-bikes, scooters, one-wheel skateboards, and other mobility devices will continue to add pressure to and usage of Redmond's trail corridors. We also did a mapping exercise for trails, and today, 70% of households are within a half mile of a trail access or trailhead. Growing the system over time will help fill some gaps. Expanding the trail system could also include filling connection gaps, creating more loops, or extending popular routes. Aside from the trail itself, the experience of the trail user is important too. Improved user experiences could translate to providing more covered benches, shade, or small way stations along trails for areas to rest. It could also include water fill stations, bike repair stations, kiosks, and trail system maps. Mileage markers, trail signs, and maps are not only helpful for the user, but they're important for reporting emergencies or safety issues. E-bike rental or charging stations could also be considered. Preliminary recommendations for the trail system include adding more linkages and connections to fill gaps, and link together parks and natural areas across the city. And on the screen, the orange dotted lines represent conceptual trail linkages that could grow the system over time. Also, focusing on creating loops for more variety in trail routes, and improving trailheads and corridors with signage, rest areas, and wayfinding. Again, we'll take a quick pause and ask, do you think these ideas about improving trail connections and amenities are going in the right direction or the wrong direction? Like before, you'll see the pop-up. There it is. So again, start entering your responses, and also for those on Zoom, use the Q&A function to add any other thoughts and comments. For those in the room, please mark your handouts with your response and use additional space on the handout for other ideas or thoughts. And again, we'll give folks another moment here to record responses. Looks like we're getting close. We'll give it another second. And there we go. So 89% saying that we're going again in the right direction. So for each of these three themes, what we're offering so far are ideas that seem consistent with the audience tonight and is somewhat supported. So thank you for the feedback. We'll move on to the next set here. So we've just covered three core priorities, but to be clear, those three core priorities are not the only priorities. The Parks and Recreation system in Redmond is broad, and we've heard a lot about other community interests. These include the need for more space for performances and cultural events, more public art, taking care of natural areas, like adding more native plants, growing the tree canopy, or making the system more resilient to climate change, and sharing more information about parks, programs, and open spaces. Now, I've covered a lot of material and many potential recommendations to add to the new park plan. Before we move into more opportunities for your feedback, let me summarize a few options that lie ahead for improving Redmond's park and recreation system. Funding resources may be limited, and choices about improvements will be guided by community priorities. So the city can build and develop the 8 undeveloped park sites to improve access to parks and create more places for outdoor recreation, or add more amenities across the park system, such as picnic shelters, gardens, dog parks, sport courts, and fields, or continue to invest in and program indoor space for expanded recreation programs, classes, and camps, or expand the trail system to connect parks and create loops, or provide more public art, cultural events, and performances. Now we're going to ask you about these options with another polling question. And this time I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Aiken, the city's park planning manager. Jeff?
Thanks, Steve. So tonight you have heard about a variety of potential projects and improvements we could make to our park system. And so we would like to hear from you if you have specific priorities for your household or those of you that use the parks. So which of the following are the biggest park and recreation priorities to you and your household? I'll show some choices on the next slide and walk through those. So we'd like you to select your top 3 choices. So 1, build the currently undeveloped park sites, those 8 sites. Add more amenities. Number 2 is add more amenities such as picnic shelters, community gardens, dog parks. Number 3, expand recreation programs, classes, and camps. Number 4, expand the trail system to connect parks and create loops within parks. Number 5, provide more public art, cultural events, and performances. And number 6, something else. These 5 above do not meet my needs. So once again, if you are on Zoom, you will see a pop-up window with those choices. And please select 3 of those. And you can also use the Q&A function to add other thoughts or comments. For those in the room, mark your handout with your responses to this question. So one of the questions that has popped up in the Q&A is, which of these options would include pickleball courts? And so that could be potentially both options 1 and 2, build currently undeveloped park sites, depending on the master plan and what the community desired. That could be an opportunity for additional pickleball or tennis courts or other park amenities. And number 2 would also get at that, add more amenities. And in parentheses, you see listed picnic shelters, gardens, and dog parks, but that could include other park amenities as well. We also got a comment that we need both pickleball and tennis courts. So we are hearing the desire for both those sports opportunities to play. So it looks like the polling questions has popped up, and you can see some of those on your screen, but 78%, the top vote getter was number 2, add more amenities to the existing parks, followed by number 1, build those 8 currently undeveloped sites and look at adding opportunities to expand the system through the park sites we already own. And on the fly, it looks like the third one was option number 4, desire to expand the trail system to connect parks and create loops. And that was something we heard strongly in the community feedback, those 1,200 responses that Steve mentioned earlier in the presentation.
Great, and thank you. I'm Caroline Chapman. I'm one of the park planners, and I have the final set of questions for tonight. This one is open-ended, and it will lead us into a discussion. So just looking for what other comments you might have. So are there other improvements that are important to you? And how else should the city focus our park resources in the next 5 years? So Zoom participants will be able to use the chat function that we had. And then you all here in the room can just add comments to your sheets. So here are the questions in all languages if needed. See if there's any comments coming in.
We did hear from a few that they thought we should go another direction on some of those open-ended questions on the core priorities. So it'd be great to get some feedback on what your thoughts were on those directions.
And we will leave this poll open for those of you who are online through the end of the webinar. So if you have more you'd like to add, we can keep taking those comments. For those of you here in the room tonight, some other questions that we have gotten are really, there's a few around pickleball courts and bathrooms, as we mentioned. A question about Mary Moore Park, which is in the city of Redmond, but it is operated by King County, and we do collaborate with them, but decisions and how they run their park is done by King County itself.
There was also a question on improving or expanding teen programs, and that's one thing we have been looking at, how to make the teen center more accessible and continue to offer programs for our teens that they want to see within the community. So if you have any suggestions, we would love to have those and work with our recreation and teen staff on that. Any questions in the audience? Anybody wants to shout out?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thanks a lot to Redmond Fox for, actively working with all the youth cricket leagues in the area. And though Redmond does not have any cricket grounds, we have made do, right? And it's only possible because of, the help that Redmond Fox staff does in terms of the new habits. So, we're very grateful and thankful for the kids keep growing. And the number of kids who want to play cricket also keep growing. So they need bigger grounds, more proper cricket grounds, making do was good 3-4 years ago, but it's no longer that. And Redmond kids, hundreds of them, have to travel all across, go up to, Kent and places like that to go play cricket. They can't play next to their home in their backyard. So I think cricket is something that Redmond Fox is seriously. I know you guys are considering that. It's always on top of the radar. We need to seriously put some grounds.
So for those of you who are online, the comment was around youth cricket fields and places to play, and that a lot of players have been making do with kind of temporary or not complete places and looking for having that be higher in the priority list. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two questions. One is where to impact these. That's the first question. Second of all, in your discussion, one thing you talk about is relative cost. In other words, building a new park is millions of dollars. Adding, benches and that's another 10,000. So although your question is good, it doesn't tell us you get one part instead of one part, you get all of these items. So impact each. I'm looking at one of the new parts. And second of all, in the discussions here in the future, let's give a us. Like for example, I know the West Side Park in Hollis. They redid a few rooms on the people somewhere in April.
So for those of you online, the first question was around when does the city collect impact fees and what can they be used for? And then also having more information on the relative cost of different projects we're proposing. And you want to jump in on impact fees?
And so we do collect impact fees from single family homes, multifamily development, and there's a calculation that creates a percentage. And part of our work in the park plan will be taking the capital projects list and identifying which projects are eligible for impact fees going forward. And so that's something we'll be working on with Steve on that. But we do collect impact fees from almost all new development to acknowledge that those impacts that come forward. And then the second piece, yeah, New Park, you mentioned West Side, that was $2.6 million that was in the 21-22 budget for that park to develop a new park.
We're developing.
Right, renovating, yeah, correct. And those existing 8 parks that Steve mentioned are sites the city owns, and depending on, you know, what features you built, it could be anywhere from 2 million to 15 million, 20 million, depending on what type of features you built. And I think one of the things we're facing or working with on this park plan too is just as Redmond urbanizes more, I think we'll have to do both. We'll have to build those undeveloped parks, but as someone mentioned with court lights and other things, we'll have to see how we can utilize our existing parks more effectively. And so striping fields for cricket and having those type of spaces, having turf fields where we can use them more hours of the day, having more amenities within those parks so they can be a little more versatile. I'll be part of that.
Really quickly, it looks like from our chat, from some staff, impact fees are also used for things like our recreation facilities and parks and trips.
Can you give me an idea of recreation overall, what of the construction budget, what part is coming from?
The question was how much of an overall construction is covered by impact fees? That's something.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head. We usually work with finance on these, but I can try to find a number and grab a card. Yeah.
I can pop in to Jeff. It really just depends on the project and the other projects that are happening. For example, right now we're doing the Redmond Senior and Community Center, and while it does have some park impact fees, due to the size of the project, park impact fees don't begin to cover the full cost of that facility. And so it utilizes things like REIT, which is real estate excise taxes, as well as additional CIP dollars and bonding. So it's one of many funding streams that we use to fund these types of projects. And we see a lot of park impact fees right now due to the level of development that we're seeing in the city of Redmond. But as development slows, probably not for another 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, we would see that shift a little bit. But there are other streams that also use park impact fees besides just park impact fees for our projects.
Thanks, Lorraine. Another comment about clusters of pickleball courts up to 12 to 16 with lights and restrooms and different features. Sand volleyball has been mentioned a couple times on that. And then also looking at designing so people can play at the night in the evening with court lights, spectator seating, parking, and space for food trucks. Lastly, on that comment, acknowledgement of the weather. So whether courts need to be covered, we've also talked about playgrounds and other opportunities to have covered for both sun when we have warmer days and potentially rain, so people can use those more often.
So we can continue to have a conversation, but just want to point out that we do have ongoing discussions happening at letsconnectredmond.com/PARCC. And as soon as this bottom bar comes down, you'll be able to see that website. And we are expecting our first draft of this park plan, and we will be also visiting with council and our various commissions. If you'd like to join for any of those meetings to give additional feedback. Or if you have a more specific question and you'd like to reach out to staff, we do have our contact information for tonight. But we're going to go around and pick up your guys' sheets and see if there's anything else we could maybe discuss. But just give us a moment to do that.
So I would like to encourage people to think about when they answer the poll, when you answered your polls and something struck you as the wrong direction, we would love to hear more feedback about that. For example, some people selected wrong direction for walkability to the parks, or some people answered wrong direction for amenities or trails. We would love to, if you want to put it in the chat, or if you're in person, please feel free to raise your hand to be called on. We would love to get a little bit more insight and feedback as to why it might be the wrong direction, and some of your suggestions.
And for those of you online, we have a few more comments in the room regarding cricket for youth players. And I know we have some of our recreation staff here tonight. They are definitely seeing more reservations for cricket, and lots of teams taking advantage of the fields that we do have. Let's see.
So I have one that touches on accessibility. And hard to see improvement if you use a wheelchair or mobility device for that 10-minute walk and equitable access. This one also points out the need for an Overlake Community Center. And more opportunities for sports and recreation programs for physically disabled. And then some trail comments on making connections. So it's great feedback. Thank you.
And there is a question online that I'm hoping some of our rec staff that might be online or director could help respond to. If there are any plans for improving or expanding our teen programs.
Yeah, I can hop onto that real fast. I know that the Teen Center has been hard at work to expand their offerings and listen to the teens particularly through the involvement of RIPAC, the Redmond Youth Advisory Council. Committee. I always get the C mixed up. To ensure that the programming that's being offered is really something that our teens and our young people in the community want. I would also say that as our recreation programs continue, we often do additional questionnaires into the community about what they'd like to see in those spaces. So if you have ideas for what you'd like to see there, we'd love to hear them. I know they've been doing more of their music programming, arts programming. They had summer camp offerings. They're volunteering. They're continuing to do gardening with as a program with our seniors. And we're just seeing them have more and more activity. So definitely seeing an uptick in those programs and excited to see what will continue. But if there's any feedback on what you'd like to see, we would also really love to hear what you have to say.
There was also a question on recreation and ways to volunteer and make recreational activities happen. And I know a few that I can comment on. We might have others on staff who can comment, but like the basketball leagues, having referees and coaches has always been something we've really looked for. More broadly on conservation, the Green Redmond Partnership has really capitalized on volunteers within Redmond to replant forest understory and trees and native plants. And we also, the mayor proposed her new budget last night and looking at a volunteer coordinator that would help the city be able to be more proactive on getting volunteer spots filled and using that. Yeah, just so they can hear on the, so people can hear online. Thanks, Amanda.
Amanda coming from the back of the room here.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Demmel, Recreation Manager. I can also kind of piggyback on the response from Lorraine about the Teen Center. So they are continuing to expand. RIPAC right now, their youth advisory board is at, I think, its highest attendance yet. So they have over 25 members in climbing. They actually have an open house tomorrow to recruit new members. So they're starting to expand their after-school programs. They hosted a lot of summer camps. They're bringing back the music scene, which was very critical to that place as you've been around in the late 90s, early 2000s. So it's an incredible place to host concerts. And so they're allowing, bringing in folks, but the teens are getting to perform there, which is very exciting. And then also expanding and offering more arts to bring in a different demographic and interest group. So yeah, we would love your feedback, but they're continuing to expand. And then on the volunteer question, all of our areas love and seek volunteers. So we actually just launched an adult volunteer program out at the farm. So in addition to the youth volunteer program that we already have, youth basketball is always looking for folks who are wanting to coach. If you officiate, you actually get paid, but we're looking for volunteers for the coaches. Seniors, we have a very active and lively senior group too, which you can help with all sorts of events. They're becoming much more active now as we come out of COVID. So lots of ways to participate there. And then there are opportunities at the teen center. So in addition to some of our notable events like Derby Days, we had hundreds of volunteers. So come our way. We would love to have you and would find a role that would fit your interests. So thank you.
And then Brian.
Oh, we have a question in the room here.
I have a question, short term, more than long term, but the senior bus program needs funded. Because without the building, they need that, even if they use it to go to another senior center for their alternate London program.
Okay, so the comment was bringing back the senior bus program
And hockey ice.
and ice hockey, yes, of course.
You can get a private.
Right. Let's see. There's a comment here of a vote for more water-based parks for all ages, especially as the climate becomes warmer and we face more and more heat waves. And we definitely heard comments similar to that in the survey and needing not only access to water, but more shade structures and tree canopy and just keeping an eye looking forward for building resiliency and mitigation efforts for climate change. And another comment on pickleball, we can't have a meeting without talking about it because it is so fun. Washington's sport. If I could add a question at the last minute, and for those online, if you could pop it into the chat or the Q&A, just would love to hear how you either found out about this meeting tonight or how you find out about Redmond Park and Recreational offerings. That would be helpful for us for future outreach.
Yeah.
Email. Okay, you're on the list. Good. Facebook. Oh, I have to put in a plug. We have a great new Instagram, Redmond Parks. You can see all the construction that's happening at the community center.
There you go. We'll let all the cricket kids follow with that.
Yeah. Oh, and Redmond meeting was posted on Seattle Metro Pickleball through email. All right. Very good. Any other comments or questions or staff will also stick around and chat if you want to get into the weeds on any of these things. And in the back of the room there, we have the maps that Steve had shared earlier of the half-mile access around parks developed in future parks, as well as our trail system. But this Let's Connect Redmond.com is really the best place for information on what's going on with this project. And there will be more opportunities to review and provide feedback. Just last night at council, they got their first look at the 23-24 budget, and there's a number of elements in that that deal with Parks and Recreation, so take a look at that. And this is my email here. If there are specific
Caroline,
yes,
what is the Instagram handle?
it is at Redmond Parks. Somebody's double checking for me right now.
Zach, do you have the handle handy?
Redmond Parks, yes.
Yeah, I actually follow.
Yeah, all right, you found us.
days.
Yeah. Well, you're one of the early adopters. It's only been out there for maybe 2 weeks or something, so. Good. All right, well, thank you all again for coming tonight in person. For all of you that are online, really appreciate your feedback and your continued engagement with this. And we just really look forward to incorporating your thoughts. And hopefully you will see your fingerprints on the plan when it comes out. So I really appreciate your support.